So go to podcastawards.com to nominate the following shows: Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast in the categories of education and also storyteller drama. The Centralist in the category of politics and news. That's with show host Joe Montaldo. Science and Beyond in the category of science and medicine, also with show host Joe Montaldo. The Outer Realm in the category of society culture, with show hosts Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. And the Pittsburgh Paranormal Chasing Prophecy in the category of religion and spirituality. There's another category that opened up for us recently, the People's Choice, so please select for this category as well. Go to podcastawards.com to vote for these 5 shows and any others you enjoy listening to. That's podcastawards.com. And remember, voting ends July 31st, so go ahead and get your votes in.
Good evening, everybody. And if you're just tuning in, you're listening live to the Angel Rock. If you are listening, you can watch the show on, I forgot to ask Joe Montaldo, who I want to give a huge shout out to. He's the owner of UPRN. He also produces all of our shows and makes my job easy. I just get to talk. But we do have UFO Paranormal. I believe we have UFO Paranormal Radio. My mouth's not working. I believe we have that channel working again tonight. If not, there is UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials is our other channel. Or if you're on Facebook, if you look for United Public Radio Network on Facebook, all you have to do is join the page. It's really easy, and you can watch it streaming on Facebook. Or if you follow me, I believe it'll be streaming on my profile because I've shared the link. A little bit about myself, and I should tell you what show you're listening to, the Angel Rock. I'm your host, Lorilei Potvin. I'm a Canadian psychic medium. I'm also a crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner. I'm a medical intuitive, a spiritual teacher and mentor, and I'm also a registered nurse. My show, The Angel Rock, if you've never been here before, welcome. And I want to say thank you to all our returning people that always watch the show and support it. My show always features people from all different walks of life, but through the work that they're doing, they make a positive change for people. I guess with humanity they do, yeah, because we kind of reach globally with the internet. And also cover all aspects of the paranormal. I say anything from UFOs to the paranormal, to anything like how to connect with your spirit guides, energy. And I also cover, I prefer to say, truth seeking than conspiracy theory. And tonight we have an amazing guest. We tried to get him on in June, and the internet gods would not cooperate. So tonight we have Rob Gutro. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him, and then I will say, welcome, Rob. Rob is an author. He's a paranormal investigator, and he's a medium with Inspired Tracking of Maryland. He's become known as a pet medium. First one I've had on my show before, although he communicates with pets and people who have passed. So we're going to be discussing his work and his amazing books. One of them has done very well, his newest one. So welcome, Rob. How are you?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me after the internet crash back in June.
It never fails. Like, you know what? I normally do the paranormal host chat. And tonight I was telling Joyce that I should be back in time. I wasn't. The boys I live with, my son and one son, and my partner who's on this network, Del, he does the delicious recipe. And they forget to put things on the grocery list. And if I didn't go out before, we would have had very few things for breakfast tomorrow. So I had to go. I'm going to disappear for 1 second. I'm going to check the chat here. We've got Zachman over on YouTube. We've got Rick Gabbett. He says, hey, everyone, my first time on here. We're so glad to have you. You know what? You guys are on YouTube, so I'm actually going to go to YouTube. It's usually what I do. So, Rob, you know what? Like I said, we've been trying to do this for a while, but I always ask people this because everybody has a story how they've discovered their gifts. Like I do. So how did you discover that you can connect with pets and people on the other side? Did I lose you?
Well, I first started out by connecting with people, and it was actually a pretty scary experience for me because I was only like 14 years old. And so my granddad passed away and in December, and in July, when I was home with the family dog, he appeared to me
Mhm.
in full color. And as he started coming together, if you will, and visibly appearing, I
Mhm.
grabbed the dog and I ran outside. I was scared to death.
How old were you?
I was 14.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So long story short, I told my parents about it because I had a great relationship with mom and dad. And my mother turned out to have the ability, but she didn't use it. She was afraid of it.
Okay.
So then I learned something about me and my family.
Mhm.
That it kind of ran in the family because my
Uh,
grandfather actually had it
okay.
too, the one that passed
Mhm.
away and the one that appeared to me.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was that. And so that, so I kind of put that on the shelf for a while. You know, I was 14, so I had to finish high school and all that stuff and go to college. And
Okay.
um, kind of a long story short, in when I went back to get to college for a third time to get a third degree, I wound up living in a haunted house.
Ooh.
And
Okay.
then when I finally got my career in meteorology going, um,
I
I had a
forgot that
puppy
part. I'm
and he was
sorry,
killed by
because
a
you are a
car.
meteorologist too. I'm sorry.
I am.
Yes. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you. I think we got a bit of a
Yeah, so
delay
when
here.
my puppy was killed by a car, we do. So he opened the door for me to communicate with pets on the other side, and ever since then, I can communicate with all pets on the other side.
Okay. All right. So I've got to ask you. Now, this is really interesting because you're right. When it runs in a family, I can almost guarantee if I meet somebody that's highly intuitive or identifies as a psychic or a medium, there's usually somebody in their family on one side or the other. And then I always ask about their children if they have children. Because, for example, my eldest is just turned 26. And ever since he's been, excuse me, he talked late in life. So did my youngest, who has severe autism. But it was my youngest or my oldest who told me about 3.5 years old, always what the dog was thinking or the cat or like, and it seemed like he just knew. And as he got older, he still, I'm trying to learn. Sometimes I can connect, sometimes I can't with pets. And he'll tell me the difference. Like, say, he says he finds for, like, say, puppies or kittens, their energy is really high. He said, so it's fast and quick for him. But and he says it's so easy. It's just, mommy, you can just hear it. But I think if it comes naturally to you, or I don't know, what did you find with yours? Did you have to work at it, or once you kind of agreed to, open that door, did it stay with you? I don't know, Rob, did you hear me? I didn't know if you did or not.
Your feed kind of got stuck there, so I couldn't hear the question.
I apologize. Like I said, we've got a storm here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I was hoping we weren't going to have an issue,
I
but
didn't hear the question because your feed kind of got
okay.
stuck. You
No,
were
what I
kind
was
of hung up
saying
there,
was,
and
okay, so
I
when you
lost you for a
finally,
while.
okay, so when you finally were open to this, your gifts, um, did it stay with you? Did you have to work with it, or it was just something that just naturally always happens?
Um, in terms of my ability, both, I guess. I first I had to work at it. I had to actually figure out that I really did have some ability,
Mhm.
and the way I did that is I would go into historic houses around where I live, and my husband came with me, and then I would sense somebody there, and then I would make notes of who they are and what they want and all that, and then I would go to the docent and talk to them, and it turned out that every time I encountered somebody, it was somebody that used to live there. So
Wow.
I that gave me some confidence in my abilities.
Yeah, because that's what it takes, right? Is evidential proof. Like, that's what I would call evidential proof before you
Mhm.
start to feel more and more confident versus, is this just my imagination or what is it, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you one of the very first historic places I went to, very close to where I live here in Maryland. I walked in and I sensed a little girl, and she wanted me to play, and she wanted me to take me upstairs to show me her room, and she told me her name was Anna, and she was I think she was about 4 or 6 years old. I can't remember. Anyway, I wound up asking the docent about her. And, I said, this is going to sound crazy, but was there a little girl named Anna who passed away here? And the docent looked at me and said, yeah, her tombstone is in the backyard. She's buried in the backyard in the very corner of the property. So that freaked me out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because I had never been there, and I didn't know there was a cemetery in the backyard. So I knew nothing about the place, but yeah.
That's so
neat.
cool. So with the animals though, and I'm just asking out of curiosity, but before I go any further, it says, hi, Rob. Nate says hi.
Okay. Cool. Hey.
I don't know if you know, I don't know if you know them. Go under the name on YouTube of the Dog Pack. So they wanted me to say hi. Oh wow, Rick Gabbard, he said it's his first time here. He said, I was recommended this channel right before the live happened. I'm really glad. We usually don't have these kind of delays, guys. I know Zach Mann's one of our regulars. He's here every show. So thanks, Zach, for being here. He says he's dealt with storms all weekend. Thankfully, the weather is nice out here now. And I always try to involve people that are in the chat, because I always hate when I go to a live and it's not, like if the chat's flying by, you can't see it.
Sure.
I understand that. But if it's, a pretty manageable chat, and then the person that's live never acknowledges any questions or anything, it's like, it's so frustrating. So I always like to involve people when they're here and they support us. So you'll see me stop and read comments or questions. So I'm really curious, because like I said, the only experience I have is live animal communication. I know a few people that do pet mediumship. So did that sort of occur right at the same time as you discovered your mediumship abilities, or how did that come to fruition for you?
So that really developed when my puppy Buzz passed away. He was a Weimaraner, and he was 7 months old. And one day when I was out walking him, his leash opened, and he saw a dog across the street, and he ran across, and a car was speeding, and just killed him. But he began to communicate immediately, pretty much right after that, and he really reawakened my abilities. He knew that I was just horrified and grief-stricken, and he wanted to make sure that I was okay, and that he knew that I knew that he was all right. So he did that in a number of ways. He did that. He moved an object. He sent me a musical sign. There are many things that I've actually cataloged. I used to keep a diary, by the way, so that became really handy when I started writing my book about pets in the afterlife. And I will tell you, it was kind of startling, actually, because it was not only me that saw him move something, it was 3 other friends. 3 friends met me at the vet where I took his body, so that they could just prepare him for me to say goodbye to him. And we were all standing by the vet in the back, back of the veterinary office, outside, and there was a trash can, and there was nothing near the trash can, but suddenly the lid flew off about 4 feet in the air, and I heard him say, "Dad, I'm right here." And and everybody was looking, and we were all trying to figure out, was that a squirrel? What was that? What happened? There was no plausible explanation for it. So, but I knew it was him.
Well, plus you heard, like you said, "Dad, I'm right here." And I guess it's not something you could have told everybody why you knew why the lid flew off, right? You're probably still in shock yourself with everything that happened. So
Yeah.
We're going to
I was
get to your
figuring it out.
books, I promise. But some of the questions I got to ask you. Okay, so my thought, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is I really believe, I always tell people you don't get the pet necessarily you want, you get the pet you need. And I really believe that our pets are almost like earth angels, if you will. And I'd love to hear your thoughts from what you picked up from the other side, or if there's anything else you can add to that, or you've got a different idea.
No, I agree with that. And often we will come, when we come into this life, we come with whatever pet we may have had in another life.
Yes.
So we're always bound together. So this life, the next life, and further on down the road. There are some interesting aspects, though, of having a pet. And sometimes I can tell when they're an old soul, when they've been around quite a bit. They've come around over and over again. And they'll reveal that to me usually. They'll also reveal to me when they're on the other side if they are actually, if they become a spirit guide to somebody.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So for those who may not know, a spirit guide is actually a spirit that is really dedicated to you, that helps you do things in your life to help you, guide you the right way.
Right. That's really, that's what I say. Because then you got to that's a really simplistic way to say it. And I really like that, Rob, because otherwise I tend to get so wordy trying to explain, because then you got to explain that we're not here by accident. And then we pick, certain things that we hope to experience to, if you will, evolve or grow ourselves over. And I'll say our soul. Usually people understand soul. And then a lot of people, right? That's a hard thing to grasp, especially I find if you've had a really difficult life, or, maybe you've had really difficult parents or upbringing or whatever. I find a lot of people have a hard time grasping that. Do you find that as well?
I do. Yeah. I always tell people that we choose to come into this embodiment while we're in spirit, and we know what we're going to have to endure, and just living through it and try to figure out what we're supposed to do in the physical life is our challenge. That's what we're supposed to do. But we can get help from the other side, I think.
Yes.
So.
Yes, you're right about that. And I always say we have the choice, obviously. And again, I don't have all the answers. But what Spirit's sort of shown me, that the more difficult sometimes life gets, like as we navigate maybe away from the purpose of one of the things we've hoped to achieve or learn in this lifetime, it seems it's all constantly almost turning you back towards what you were hoping to achieve. But we have the choice not to do it at all, right?
Yes. Yep, we do.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes this life different. We have the choice. Mm-hmm. So one thing I wanted to touch base with you about was the soul, because one of the things that's important to me as a scientist, as a meteorologist, is how to explain the paranormal. And
do you have enough time?
I'll give you the scientific overview.
Okay.
Basically, I always say that the foundation of the paranormal is based in energy. So
absolutely.
In science, there's a law called the law of conservation of energy, which most scientists say doesn't apply to the paranormal, but
it does.
We are beings of energy when we are either a ghost or a spirit. And I'll explain the difference between those two in a minute. So as such, the paranormal can be explained by energy. And the law states that energy can't be destroyed, only transformed. So it has to go somewhere. So we have energies within our bodies, physical energies like blood pumping and cell splitting, and our thoughts are little electrical impulses. All those things combined, all those energies combined with memories, personality, and knowledge. And that's what I call a soul. Memories, personality, and knowledge. And every living thing has a soul, including animals. I'm sure you've heard some people say, oh, animals don't have souls, right?
Yes, they do.
Yeah, of course they yeah, of course they do. Every living thing has a soul. So whoever says that animals don't have souls is likely doesn't have a soul themselves, maybe. Or because it's memories, personality, and knowledge. And animals rule the earth long before
Absolutely.
man came and screwed it up. So I see that from a scientific point of view because I'm a meteorologist.
Okay.
Um, so when we're that energy, I have learned that that's when we make a conscious choice. We make a choice to stay earthbound at a fixed location of our choosing. And that's what I call a ghost. Or we cross over and join the energies of the universe or heaven or whatever you want to call the other side. That's what I call a spirit.
I call it home.
Home, okay. So a ghost is earthbound and a spirit has crossed over. And
Yes.
I not only are they both use energy to get strong enough, um, but they also use similar and different energies. So um, I can explain that if you wish. I don't want. I need to like.
I love, okay, so I don't know, we've talked lots, but I don't think I've ever really told you about my background. And some people will know and some won't. We've got some new people here. We have an interesting question from the chat too, but I'll explain this to you quickly. Being a nurse, I hurt my back and I'm not able to go back to work, but I stay up on nursing. I still have my license and what have you. But the home I was living in, and it started about 11 years ago. We moved about a year and a half ago. It is the most extreme paranormal experience I have ever heard of. Other people have experienced it besides ourselves. We've been burnt, we've been bit, we've been scratched. My partner's been thrown 15 feet. And it all started with, we shared our story on Paranormal Survivors, season 4, episode 9. It's called Demonic Hauntings. And what happened was, excuse me, I've always loved angels. I've always been very intuitive, but I wasn't really aware of my gifts. And I believe it's this experience. And the reason why I share it is because some people will understand the paranormal and some won't, but a lot do that are attending this. But I always like to hear people's perspective. And right now we're right on par with what you're saying. Anyways, long story short, mine started with a dream about 16 years ago, and I had just been looking into getting my angel oracle card certification with Doreen Virtue when she was doing that. Long story short, it's like I had this dream 10 minutes ago. So there was a man in my tree, in the front tree in my old house's yard. He identified himself as demonic, gave me his name, gave me the spelling, tried to get me to follow him. And it's not radio friendly what I told him in the dream to do. And there's no way on earth I was following him. And then I again told him to leave. And this is the short version. And he was wagging his finger at me like this. And oh, no, 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 I'm not going anywhere. And he said, every time you see a crow or a raven, you'll know it's me. And all heck broke loose in our house. Now, long story short, fast forwarding 10 years later, and I have, as we all do probably in this field, we have a library of books we read and try and learn. And I had many about angels, fallen angels. I'd never heard this name. I was raised Roman Catholic. I always say I have a belief in God. That's my belief, but I'm not super uber religious, nor do I subscribe to religion. And anybody that does, that's fine. That's their personal choice. Just for me, I feel I don't have to go to a special place to connect with the other side. Anyways, 10 years later, I had somebody contact me and they needed some help, and they gave me a name and they asked me if it was demonic. And I said, well, that's not my field of expertise in any way, but let me have a look for you. And there on the page, I found the name, the spelling, the animal form. Everything this thing told me was right there on the page. So I've done all kinds of research. Most of the people here, I don't know about some of the people we've got here, but I like to hear other people's perspective of how the paranormal is, because I think that's a common question. What's the difference between a ghost and, somebody that's passed away, and, how do they cross over? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We do have an interesting question, and please carry on, because we are going to get to your book. So we're going to have lots of time. I want to find out all of it.
No, that's fine. I mean, I think it's really important to explain the foundations of things.
Absolutely.
So we can build from there. So
Okay,
not
but
not
Rick wants to know, Rick Gobert, I thought it was a good question. And if you want to hang on to this question till we get further into what we're doing, but he wants to know, what was the most unique kind of animal you have ever communicated in spirit with so far?
Oh, that's a good question.
I thought it was too.
Well, let's see. In addition to cats, dogs, and horses, I've also communicated with gerbils and hamsters and rabbits and rats and even one fish and a
Oh, you
bird.
read my mind, because I was thinking, oh, please say fish, please say fish.
Yeah, they can't tell you a whole lot. They can only really show you stuff that they have observed. That's really how they can communicate. But really, any domesticated animal, any animal that shares the human environment, they can communicate with me. I kind of draw the line with spiders and snakes.
Gotcha.
Because I don't creep.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
So no offense to people who have spiders and snakes, but like that old Jim Stafford song from the 1970s, I don't like spiders and snakes.
No, I think it's important, like you said, to explain the foundation. That I just wanted to let you know, like, some people will know and some might not, because a lot of people, I don't know if you were told this, maybe not, because you said it was your mom who didn't embrace the gift, but I mean, most children growing up are told there's no such thing as ghosts, there's no such thing as monsters, well, we know different, don't we? Because there's a lot that isn't visible to the human eye. But I always say this, I'll tell you this, Rob. I always tell people, trust your animals, whatever they're looking at, barking at, meowing at, what have you, and your little kids, because I believe little kids can see spirit and babies. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason I've learned is that a child's mind the logical mind is not developed. So as we grow older, we're taught to think logically and basically dispel anything that doesn't fit in the logical physical universe. So that children haven't learned that yet. So therefore, they just tell you what they see. And what's interesting about pets is that I have learned, I've done a lot of research on pets. I'm a dog dad, by the way, and I've done dog rescue for like 10 years with my husband.
Love it.
So I've learned that by researching this, dogs and cats have different cones and rods in their eyes, which enables them to see faster movement. As a paranormal investigator, we use high-speed cameras that can catch the movement of a ghost or a spirit, if you're lucky enough to catch one. So they can see them head on, although we cannot often. Dogs and cats also can hear at different frequencies that humans cannot hear. If you think of a dog whistle, we can't hear a dog whistle, but they can.
Absolutely.
And so they can hear ghosts and spirits. And I found that when we use recorders in paranormal investigations, we can ask a question and we won't hear an answer. But if we rewind the recorder and play it, there's an answer. And they're speaking at a different frequency that the recorder picks up. So dogs can hear them head on. So yeah.
No, I always say that to people. Always trust your pets. And again, with mentoring, because I'm finding that there's so many young people coming in. I've almost theorized that it's like a new breed of human, if you will, because they seem to have a lot more sensitivity. They seem to come in with their gifts a lot more developed. And you get a lot of parents that are thinking, oh my God, what is my kid crazy? What's going on? So they'll contact someone like me or you. And, I always say, especially if they're little, do they have an imaginary friend? Find out more about that imaginary friend, right? So
it's interesting that you mentioned that. My friend Jill contacted me that her cousin's daughter was saying things about seeing people or seeing someone and around her home, And so myself and another medium from Inspired Ghost Tracking, which I'm the group part of that group, we did a remote kind of connection, and we
Okay.
figured out that girl actually has an ability, and we figured out who was haunting her.
Okay.
It was somebody that lived there, lived in the vicinity before, and it
Mm-hmm.
was a young girl who kept coming to her because they were close in age. So
That makes
yeah, they
sense.
didn't know whether to. They questioned, they questioned whether or not she was actually making things up or what was going on, and so
That's
we
a
were able
hard
to solve the case.
that's a hard place to be. And the one thing I would
Mhm.
love if you would share, because I just had this question from somebody. It was local, and they asked if I had people to my home to do readings, and I don't. I feel my home is a safe space, especially after what we've been through in the last home. It's not a place of fear. It's
Mhm.
just, I know they don't forget who you are, the good and the bad. And
Yeah.
I like to keep my energy controlled. And I'm not a controlling person, but I know what's coming in the house and what's not, what belongs here, what doesn't. And plus, I tell them that it doesn't make a difference, and they couldn't understand this. I ended up sending them a couple articles that were in layman's terms, but explaining how quantum physics is proving this. But you just did this yourself. So if you got a better explanation so people can understand, you don't need to be in the same room to connect with spirit or that energy, right?
Right. Absolutely. Because and the way I think about it is, if you think about all the energy that flows through the universe,
Mm-hmm.
you have gamma rays and cosmic rays and X-rays and
Absolutely.
all kinds of energy. It's continually flowing through the universe. All you have to do is tap into that stream and focus on what energy you want, and you can do it.
Mm-hmm. Actually, it's really interesting because I do a lot of, I'll say, digital activism as well as this and many other different things. So I connect with a lot of different people. And I've been finding lately, and I don't know about you, but it's a little bit off topic, but it's kind of on energy. Lately, I'm not sure what it is. I've heard from many people the veil may be a bit thinner right now for whatever reason, but it seems like people trying to manifest good things, they're really successful at it lately. Plus, a lot of people have been complaining of dizziness and not understanding why, or really shifting. Have you heard that within the community that you deal with at all?
No, I actually haven't heard anything about increases in dizziness or a thinning veil, but
Mhm.
um, then again, I haven't been out much.
Yeah.
I've been kind of sitting right here and teleworking, so you know.
I didn't comment.
Um,
I just read it because you know what it is? I'm in about 5 or 6 messenger chat groups I got added to, and it's people from all over the world. So you hear what people are saying.
mhm,
But okay, for example, I'll give you a really quick example. Okay. My eldest son
mhm.
went out to this lake where we have our cottage on. He wasn't at the cottage. It is one of the largest, deepest spring fed lakes in Ontario, Canada. Okay. He was
Wow.
learning how to board with his partner, and he kept falling a lot. And he was in the middle of the lake. Like, they practice scuba diving in this lake. That's how deep it is. And he lost the ring that his partner gave him. So they went back
Oh
Sunday,
no.
and no, just wait. And he understands about this. I never push these kind of beliefs on my sons, but if they had questions, we talked about it, and they both have abilities. So he goes, Mom, I don't know. He goes, I almost feel like somebody or something was watching me from across the lake. And I thought, I'm getting goosebumps as I'm telling you this. And I said, okay. And then he told me about the lost ring, and he goes, Mom, you're not going to believe this. We went back the next day. There was no chance we were going to find this ring. He said, I took his partner took a spin around on the paddle boat, nothing. He did. And as he's coming back to the shore, he sees something glimmering, and he didn't even know there was a rock there. He said the ring looked like somebody had taken the rock and perfectly placed it on the rock for him to find it. There should have been no chance whatsoever of ever finding this ring. And he said, first I felt
Yeah.
like somebody was
Wow.
watching me. Yeah. And I've heard all kinds of stories like this lately. Maybe it's just up in Canada, but I know actually it's been from all over the world. People have been sharing really interesting, cool stories, which in a way, if you think about it, right? What a beautiful thing, because a lot of people need hope right now with what's going on. So, mm. So let's get on to your books then. So
That's pretty awesome.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just that's pretty pretty unbelievable. I mean, so I guess the explanation would be that a spirit connected to him
It's
made it happen and made him look in that direction at that time to see it.
I have to tell you, Rob, it is so crazy when you turn down the road to this cottage. There's only 5 cabs on there. It is literally, and I'm not really like, I don't normally talk about energy and stuff. You can feel the energy change the minute you turn down the road. It is the craziest thing. I've known my partner's family my whole life, and his dad passed away probably almost 20 years ago. I have seen his dad out at this camp, walk right through a wall. Could see what he was wearing. I could see, like,
Wow.
it's just it's so incredible. Like even to go sit out on the dock and meditate. Like the water is like glass. It is one of the most beautiful places. I'm telling you, it's incredible. Mm-hmm. So I was going to say to you. So now you've written 3 books, right?
Well, I've written 3 about pets, but I've written 8. So
I didn't
the
know
other
it
5
was
are about
8. Well,
people.
tell us all about them. What made you decide
Yeah.
to write books? And
Well, it was Buzz who influenced me. This, by the way, this is Buzz behind me. He's on that's the cover of Pets in the Afterlife 1. So you can see that. Behind me on the other side is Pets in the Afterlife 2. So
I have one of your covers behind
I don't have
us.
3 with me.
I think it's your newest book I have behind us.
Yeah, it's Pets in the Afterlife 2.
Okay. Okay, because
Yep, I noticed that. It's Pets 2.
Is it Pets 2? Okay.
So thank you. Yeah.
Okay, that's
so
not your
on
latest.
every single No, Pets in the Afterlife 3 is my latest.
That's what I thought. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So on every one of these Pets in the Afterlife books, one of our dogs who passed is featured. So Buzz was on the first one. On the second one, in the very back, you might be able to see in very light shadow is our dog Sprite. He was a dachshund. He's in the corner. And in Pets in the Afterlife 3, we lost 2 dogs in 2020. Our Weimaraner Dolly and our dachshund Franklin. And Franklin was 16 and Dolly was just shy of 16. But they're also on the cover. And Dolly and Franklin, when they passed, it was devastating beyond belief. I mean, they were almost 16. So we raised them since they were puppies. And I will tell you that one of the reasons why I wrote the books Pets in the Afterlife is to help offer comfort and get people through their grief by teaching them how to recognize signs from their pets on the other side. I know that when Dolly passed, I adopted her from a Weimaraner rescue at 3 months old. She was an abandoned puppy. She was my heart dog. And the emptiness, it was gut-wrenching when she passed. As a matter of fact, we have another dachshund who is bonded to her. He's now 10, and he would sleep with her every night for his entire 10 years. And when she passed, every night he would come in from the outside and he would sit on her bed and wait for me to tell him it was okay to go to his bed. And he still does that tonight. Now, she's been gone since October, and it kills me. And sometimes I've actually seen her there. So I've seen her there. So yeah, it's really, I'm not writing from an outsider's perspective. All of these things happen to me. And it really is losing a child.
It is.
You know, my husband and I will never have human children.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we made that choice when we heard a screaming 2-year-old when we were first seeing each other.
My eldest has, well,
That
his partner is a husband as well. So I don't know if I'll ever be a grandmother either. But so there, yes, pets are children. I agree.
so one thing I tell people is that I want you to think about how pets are very much children to those of us that don't have human children.
Absolutely.
We raise them, we teach them language, we
Mm-hmm.
teach them habits. They know when dinner time is.
Yes.
We take them to the doctor. We take them to school and train them.
Mm-hmm.
They learn our vocabulary words. They learn our routine. They learn how to play well with others. All of the things that we teach human children. And I always tell people that the only difference between pets and human children is that pets don't grow up and marry someone you hate and move away.
Well, I'm going to
Right?
tell
So
you something. I'm a mother. I never thought I would be a mother. And my pets, I am a major animal lover. I have had my eldest, and both my boys are animal lovers because of myself. And I have had 5 dogs at one time. We lost 2
wow.
same year before we left. And it's never the same. I have a shepherd. She's not in here. I'm surprised she'll probably come in. But no, they're like my kids too, Rob. So you know what? Their pets are family, and you're absolutely right. I think that when you have another little individual, so it doesn't matter what age, but especially when you raise them from these helpless little puppies, and
Mm-hmm.
you help them develop into who they are meant to be, it breaks my heart when I hear about people that just drop them off. I just think, my God, how could you do? Or people that don't think pets have souls or
Well,
intelligence. It
yeah.
breaks
So those
my heart.
people are. I just have to say, those people that think that pets don't have intelligence or souls are just simply uneducated and uninformed. And I have other words, but I'm not going to say that because this is
Yeah,
on
me
YouTube.
too.
um, I have no respect for people who think that pets don't have any intelligence or souls. Um, Pets are just like human children. Would you dump your human child off at a kill shelter if
Never.
they misbehave? Come on.
But
So
Rob,
use your head. And for the people,
I'll tell you right now,
yeah.
though, even when I tell people, I've never yelled at even my children. I said I've
Mhm.
raised them to be respectful, to be polite. They knew wrong from right, but I've never hit them, or I've never screamed at them or yelled at them. People tell, especially parents, tell me I'm lying. I'm not, which means you don't have to do that, and you don't have to do that with pets either. And the thing people don't understand is they all come with a different personality. Doesn't matter if it's a
Mhm.
rat, doesn't matter if it's a gerbil, a cat, a dog. And the one thing I have to say about pets, if you ever want to know what unconditional love is, you need to love a pet and have a pet, because
Exactly.
that epitome of it, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I cite in some of my books is that I've read some studies, some psychological studies that actually say that have found rather that people grieve more deeply for their pets than they do for humans.
I would believe that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and, and the psychological aspect of that is that because we raise our pets like we raise children, and their
Mm-hmm.
lives are only short. I mean,
Sure.
between
Mm-hmm.
10 and 15 years if we're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to see the death of a child is the most traumatic thing you can experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell you that I have received quite a number of emails from people around the world who were actually suicidal. And I had to kind of talk them down. And I'm not a therapist, I'm just a medium. Um, and if anybody listening who has lost a pet is feeling very depressed and suicidal, please
Mm-hmm.
call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. and discuss it with somebody, because your grief is real. It absolutely is real, and you are absolutely well founded to feel that way, because a part of your heart is missing physically. But the reason I wrote these books is to help you understand that although they're physically not there, they are in spirit, and they show us in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm. I think that's beautiful. Zach Mann wrote, "I lost my mini Doxy last year. I miss her every day." And I have to agree with you. And I think it's much more difficult to grieve as a pet parent, because there's a lot of people will use the word maybe not as educated about it. And it's like, what the hell's the matter with you? Like, it's just a dog or it's just a cat. Well, I'm going to tell you, my youngest son, he got this cat for his birthday, Mocha, and he's the one with severe autism. And
Mm-hmm.
I have never seen a bond like this between a human and an animal. Like, he would be on his bed and he can speak, but he's limited with receptive language and what have you. And he'd say, Mocha, and you'd hear Mocha go, meow, 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 meow. And then if, say, he did go to his father's house for the weekend, Mocha never
Mm-hmm.
left his bed. She wouldn't even come and eat. We'd have to encourage her to come and drink. And what had happened was our bedroom in the old house was in the basement. And I heard my partner get up because she was banging her head against the door at 4 o'clock in the morning. Feed me. She had food out, but she wanted somebody to come give her some wet food. So he said, oh, I'll just go feed her. And I was still half asleep. And then all of a sudden, about a half hour later, I heard Dell, that's my partner's name, say, Mocha, I just fed you. And I sat straight up in bed because I heard her scream. I ran out the door and I looked at her, and I knew, being a nurse, and I'm not trying to give TMI, but there was this froth like coming from her mouth. And I'm thinking, cardiac, it's got to be something cardiac. So as I'm bringing her up the stairs, she's screaming. And I'm trying not to cry. My kids are awake. They're older boys. But this was my youngest cat. And as I went to stand her up, she couldn't stand. And it was Justin, my youngest, who said, Mommy, she can't stand up. So I picked her up. Her feet felt cold. And I have a lot of vet apps. So I looked it up really quickly. And I was praying I was wrong, but she had something called a saddle thrombus. So somewhere she'd been to the vet. She was young. She was only 3. She had been spayed. They'd never picked this up. She must have had a cardiac arrhythmia that developed a clot. So we have like a main artery in our body, same as cats or dogs, and then it goes into the legs. Cats can develop a clot right where that wide part is. There's nothing they can do. So I had to tell my youngest and say, honey, you have to say goodbye to her. Mommy's not, it just broke me to do this. And then I brought her in, and it wasn't our vet. So the lady was nasty. And I said, listen, this pet's in terrible pain. The vet was wonderful. And he said, yeah, you're right. Those are the things you don't want to be right about. He even helped me with everything. But the reason why I share this story and about grief, my son's a big boy. He lost 70 pounds over this. It took him, he's still not over her, and it's been years. But what I do want to share, and I'd love to hear if you've had this experience, the night after she passed, the night of that she had passed, he came into the bedroom downstairs, and as he opened the door, we heard her meow. And then as I was tucking him into bed, and for the longest time, you would feel a plop on the bed with my son when I'd go to tuck him in. There'd be an indent in the bed. I remember one time so she was there. Never mind that I was talking to somebody that wasn't a good friend on video. And I swear to God to you, Rob, clear as day, I could see this cat sitting on the pillow of her bed beside her, grooming itself and flicking its tail. And I said, did you used to have a cat that lay on the pillow beside you? And she said, Oh yeah, she goes, that was my boo. She goes, we lost Boo last year. I said, I know you're probably not going to believe this, but I'm just looking at you right now. So I did take a picture. I don't have it. She does, but it wasn't the same as in real person. So have you seen this as well? Obviously with the books, right? Some of the signs.
Oh yeah, actually, I talked to a lot of cat parents who reported the same kinds of things
Yeah,
all the
yeah.
time. Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Um,
So what kind
and
of signs do dogs leave?
they leave similar signs.
Mhm.
So there's a whole variety of things. They do bark from the other side. It takes a
Oh
lot of energy. And so, so when the cat meowed, did it sound like it was in the same room, or did it sound like it was in another room?
no, sounded
Do
like
you
when
know?
he opened the door, it was like she was with him in spirit, came through the door and heard it like clear as a bell, like she was with him, like right with him.
Okay.
Hmm.
Because I found in my experiences, I've heard uh, people speak and dogs and cats from other. It sounded like other rooms, but I knew they were right there, standing next to me because of the energy it takes. Um,
Right.
so, so I've seen them. So, and anybody can have these experiences too.
Oh yeah.
You can see them visibly in color, which is rare, but it happens. Usually they appear as a shadow, and the reason they appear as a shadow, and I've kind of figured this out, is that because it requires energy, if they don't get enough energy, they appear as a shadow.
Hmm.
If they do get enough energy, they can appear visibly. So they draw on energies like heat, light, water, and electricity. Um, Spirits of loved ones, like our dogs and cats, draw on love, faith, and hope, while earthbound ghosts draw on the negative emotions of fear, anxiety, depression, and anger. So that's the difference in the energy part. But so they can appear. They can also lead you to another pet that looks just like them.
Okay.
Um, that happened to me in 2009.
Hmm.
Buzz passed in 2005, and my husband Tom and I were on vacation. We were in Puerto Rico. Went to San Juan for the first time ever,
Hmm.
and while we were walking around, we came to a street that had 5 avenues attached to it around a circle, and we had to pick which way to go. We had no idea where we were. So I felt nudged to go one specific direction. And and he said, well, why do you want to go that way? And I said, I don't know. I just feel like we have to go that way. Well, I found out why. When
Okay.
we get to the end of the street, there was a
Hmm.
dog walker, and he was walking, I think about 7 dogs, and one of them was a Weimaraner that looked just like Buzz.
Aw.
And Buzz said, in my head, Dad, do you know what today is? And it struck me like a rock. It was the 4th anniversary of the day he passed, the
Aw.
very day. So I've learned that spirits will come to us on birthdays, anniversaries, and holidays. And pets also do the same thing. And the reason they do that is because they're reading our emotional energy, and they know our emotions are elevated, usually on holidays.
Mhm.
So they like to come around the time when our emotions are elevated. Unless you're having Thanksgiving with your relatives and you don't like them, then then your energy's a little the other way. But, you know, that depends.
I think you bring up a
But
really good. Oh, go
but yeah,
ahead, Rob.
so often I hear from cat parents they feel the like cat prints on the bed.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, Often a dog or a cat will lay against your legs at night, so you'll feel a light pressure,
Hmm.
and it really is them in spirit.
Hmm.
Um, Usually, you'll see maybe a shadow in their favorite place where they used to sit, whether it's on a window looking out or in a corner where their bed used to be. They can move things because they're beings of energy. They can play with electricity.
Hmm.
Um, uh, so when Buzz passed, I had a roommate, and I think it was a week after he passed. I was out in my car waiting for my roommate to come out of the house,
I see.
and he came yelling out of the house, panicked, like totally white. And I asked him what was the matter, and he said, I walked over as I was walking to the door to exit to come out. One of the sneakers went from one side of the hallway to the other side of the hallway and just fell. And Buzz had an affinity for destroying shoes as a puppy.
Okay.
So I knew it was him.
It was unmistakable.
Unmistakable.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that roommate turned out to be somewhat challenging. So it kind of, it was kind of fitting, I guess.
You know what I like, though, Rob, that you've done, and I find this is part of the teaching process for people to understand that I always say, whether you believe, well, most of us call it collectively spirit when we work with it, but your spirit guides, angels, we have all kinds in the positive that are there for us. And I always say, whether you believe in them or not, they believe in you and they're with you. But what I love about that you say that you've shared your own personal experiences in the books, but also to what to look for that might be a message from your pet, or like you said, you've written 8 books, because I think that's so important for people to realize. And I find the more we pay attention, the more spirit sends us as confirmation or what have you. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. The more you're open to it, the more you're going to notice things. And I will say, though, that there are some folks that have messaged me and said, well, I want to hear from my mother tonight. I know you just gave me a message last week, but I want to ask my mother if this is like the right dress to buy. And I'm like, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't, no.
Yeah, it's like, it doesn't work that way. They come to you when they have something to share with you. And
that's important. Yes.
Yeah. Would you can't, it's not like picking up the phone and saying, hey, Mom. They have to work at it, and it takes a lot of energy for them too. Pets or people, doesn't matter. But one of the things that's interesting to me as a medium is the way that pets convey that I'm talking to them, and the way other ways they do that. And this is kind of as a medium, they will share the way they felt before they passed away. They will let me share they will share their pain of passing, or what they experienced before that, to identify who they are. And I have to tell you that there are quite a few readings that I've done where I've actually had to solve how they passed away because their pet parent didn't know. I felt kidney failure and certain problems. I felt back legs go out, front legs, throat problems, all kinds of things. And I do my readings while I'm sitting at the computer, and suddenly I can feel my right, maybe my right hip get suddenly weak and start really hurting. And that tells me that the dog, for instance, had problems with their right leg. And I'll type this out as my reading, and the pet parent will come back and say, how did you know that it was the dog's right leg that gave way all the time? And I said, because they share this. Yeah, they told me.
I have a question for you, but before we do, I want to share something cute I think our audience will enjoy, and you will too. I'm just backing up just a bit. When we're talking about signs from spirit, I have a picture from my dog, Miley. She was one of our dogs that we lost about 1.5 years ago. She looked like Benji. She was a Chihuahua Yorkie, but she had really long legs. She looked just like that dog from the 70s and Benji almost, okay?
You're dating yourself. I know who Benji is.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm going to be 56 in August. I don't hide my age.
We're right in the same
It's just
ballpark.
a number. So anyways, okay, when she was a puppy, she left me a pee-pee accident that you will swear to God, anybody that has seen it is so perfect. It is a heart shape. And I took a picture of it. And as I started to notice hearts, I now have probably over 100 different, not pee stains, people. It started with that. But I've noticed now that that's a message from my guides that either I'm on the right track or what it is. I have found them in a mochaccino, in the whipped cream, a whole box of 20 chicken nuggets from, say, Pizza or Pizza Hut, perfect heart. You name it. You coffee spill on the counter, perfect heart. So the more you notice, the more it happens. But what I'm saying is it came from my pet. And you know what? Like, it was so cute. How could you be angry? Well, not that it would be. She was potty training. But I mean, it's like, oops, sorry, Mom, had to go, but I left your heart. Love ya.
Exactly. Exactly. I remember doing a reading for someone, I think who lost their cat, and the cat showed me that they would send them a leaf in the shape of a heart, and I had never that's the first time I ever got a reading like that, and I wrote that, and 2 days later, the pet mom wrote me back and sent me a picture of a leaf in the shape of a heart that was right at her driveway when she opened her garage door.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. And another friend of mine lost his dog, and he said that he had a hydrangea plant in front of his house that never blossomed in years that he lived there. And this is in my Pets in the Afterlife 1 book.
Okay.
The very first bloom that ever blossomed there was right after she died. And this is the shape. It was the shape of a heart. He took that picture. Yeah. Yeah. So pets can use flowers as a way to, or anything, leaves or whatever. They can also influence things in nature. So by that, I mean, they can influence birds and butterflies to behave erratically, squirrels, dragonflies. One of our dog, Sprite, who's on the cover of Pets in the Afterlife 2, is famous for sending a butterfly. After he died, it was July 8th, 2013. You never forget these dates. Soon after, we were out in the backyard with our other dogs, and Sprite he was 16 and a half, so he would amble around, he was a little dachshund. And we hadn't seen a butterfly the whole year. We had butterfly bushes that weren't doing their job, by the way. We were thinking of Sprite, and he sent this butterfly. Now, I got that close to that butterfly with a cell phone.
And it didn't move, right?
Didn't move.
Yeah.
The other thing that's interesting is that it has to behave erratically. So this butterfly fluttered around for about 15 minutes and only around the ground in between our other dogs, just the same way Sprite used to walk.
Oh, wow.
So usually on either Sprite's, it's usually around the date of Sprite's passing, that we will see a butterfly. It has to be a yellow and black butterfly.
Wow.
Yep. Actually, we were on vacation and we were talking about Sprite, and we walked into a store and there was a display of butterflies, all yellow and black.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
People that don't understand this will say, oh, that's just a coincidence. No, it's not a coincidence. Like, it could have been any other color. And you know that that's the sign from Sprite. You know it's from Sprite. Now, we have a few comments I wanted to share with you, Rob. Rick Gabbert said, big hugs to you, Rob. And then he said,
I love him. He's a great guy. He's actually a friend of mine.
Oh, is he okay? Well, he said big hugs to you. And then he said, how did you react when first finding out that you were able to communicate with animals? I think we kind of talked a little bit about it in the beginning, but that was one of Rick's questions for you just now.
Yeah, well, I was in shock when Buzz passed. So I wasn't even thinking about being able to communicate with animals, to be honest with you. It didn't finally hit me until, I don't know, days later when he kept sending me messages. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I can communicate with animals on the other side. So yeah, that was my reaction.
The other thing I always think with animals or even our loved ones too, because I've worked extensively in palliative care, I always say I've been so deeply blessed to be there hundreds of times at the beginning of life working in the NICU. And then when I hurt my back, I was working out in the community. And I used to go out to people's homes who would choose to transition, if you will, pass away in their homes. And I've
Sure.
been so honored to have been asked to be there and have witnessed many miraculous things while it's happened. But the thing is that I don't think people realize is, and we're talking about energy again, and there is no timetable. It is personal to every single human being. It
Mhm.
breaks my heart when people say to somebody that's lost a loved one, well, don't you think you've grieved long enough? Don't you think you should be moving on? There's no timetable, and
No,
it never goes
no time
away. It
limit.
is like a new normal eventually starts to grow around that cluster of a hole, if you will, that you're missing and feeling in your heart. But when we're grieving, it naturally, our energy is lower vibrational too. So I've often wondered sometimes maybe why people have a hard time recognizing those signs, feeling or hearing their loved ones, is because it kind of naturally goes hand in hand with the grieving process. What's your thoughts on that, Rob?
Yeah, I found that grief actually blocks signs.
Mm-hmm.
We become so ingrained in our grief that we can't really see beyond it. And usually we deny things or we call them coincidences. And I've learned that when it comes to things from spirit, there is no such thing as a
No, there
coincidence.
isn't.
They make things happen. Yeah.
Mhm. But I guess the reason why I mention it is, and it's not something that anybody's doing. I don't know if it's like a protective mechanism because we go through so many stages, and and when you're supporting somebody that's grieving, and there's the 5 stages of death and dying by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and
Ross, I read that. Yeah.
I always say it should have been called the 5 stages of loss, because
Yes.
whenever we experience a big loss in our life, it could be a relationship, it could be a job you loved, a home you loved, anything like that. There's a
Mhm.
scale when we start getting into human beings and, children or being a pet parent or what have you. That especially is, I think, at the top, and it takes a long time. And I don't think you ever really get over it. But like I said, it's a normal thing. So it's a beautiful thing, I think, that you've written these books to help people as the healing process goes on, to help them, but also to start recognizing the signs.
Yes, and I will. I have to tell you that these books are not just my experiences.
Mm-hmm.
They are so half of them are filled with stories from others who shared them with me. When I do a lot of lectures at animal rescues
Mm-hmm.
as fundraisers
I love it.
about this topic, because there's so many people that need to be reached that are suffering, and so they've shared these stories with me. They even, I love it when I go and do a lecture because they will actually openly share stories with each other
Yeah.
during these lectures. Um, and the other half of them are all readings that I've done
Mm-hmm.
that their pet parents have graciously allowed me to share, so that everybody reading them can see all the many ways that pets can communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of them has there's a picture of a paw print on a T-shirt. So a woman had washed her clothes and put her clothes away, and she was missing her dog. I think his name is Tenchi.
Mm-hmm.
And she pulled out her shirt, and there was a paw print on it. And she's like, "Where did that come from?"
Mm-hmm.
Um, Somebody else saw paw prints in their bath mat a month after their dog had passed away. Their
Oh.
bath mat. You use your bath mat every day if you step out. So it's just amazing the types of signs. So uh, yeah, uh, I don't know. I could go on and on about all the different signs that I see.
We can go wherever you want because it's all about you. No, I have a question for you. Is what I want to know. I know what I believe or I feel, but that doesn't mean necessarily you agree or what your experience is. But you kind of answered it with the way that you say pets come back in different lifetimes with us. We're bonded, if you will. Do
Yes.
you find that pets also can come back again in the same lifetime? And the reason why I ask you is I had a cat named Jessie who was just like a dog. He was just so adorable. But we used to call him Jesse the party cat because I was single then. And he was right in there like a dirty shirt with everybody. And I now have a cat named Socks that looks identical to him,
Hmm.
acts like him, and the same as my dog Miley that I told you about. I
Hmm.
used to have a dog when I was a teenager. She was the exact opposite in personality, but they almost looked identical, and they were very, very smart. There were so many similarities. So do you find that as well, or?
Actually, that's a great question, because what I have learned is
Mhm.
that they don't come back.
Oh, that's good
But
to
what
know.
they do is
Mhm.
that, number one, they will lead you to adopt another pet that looks like them.
Got you.
And
Okay.
number two, they come back in spirit and they train the new dog or cat to do
Got you.
similar things that they
Got
did, so you will know they're still around.
you. Okay.
You always will remember your dog. Is it your dog Miley? Is
Yeah.
that what you said?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Miley.
Okay. So you'll remember Miley because Miley has come back and has trained your new dog to do things
Mhm.
that Miley used to do.
Mhm.
And that's what they want. They want us to continually to remember them, so they will train them to do the same habits.
Mhm.
They will all be waiting for us in the light, all of them.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
and that was actually my first public reading with a
Mhm.
dog that wasn't Buzz. Um, there was a little Chihuahua that kept coming to me during a session. I went to a medium session with my friend Barb Mallon, who was a medium in Virginia, and she invited me, and I went, and I got all these messages, and I read them usually read them at the end. But during the break, this little Chihuahua kept coming to me, and he says, "My name is Chico." I'm like,
Okay. Hi, Chico.
okay. And he's a little tan Chihuahua, and he said, "My name is Chico," and he said, "I have a message. I have to have you contact my human." And I'm like, okay. So I said, "Who is it? This room has like 50 people." And he says, "I will tell you." And and I'm standing there thinking, I better not say this out loud because people are going to think I'm crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So during the break, people were filing out to go get refreshments or something, and he said, "That's her."
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Excuse me, ma'am." Um, I said, "Could you come here for just a minute?" And she said, "Oh, yes." And I said, "Do you know of a little Chihuahua named Chico, a little tan Chihuahua?"
Yeah.
And her mouth dropped, and
Oh,
she said, "That's my mother's dog."
wow.
And Chico passed,
Mm-hmm.
and she said, "What in the world is Chico coming through for?" And so Chico showed me a medium-sized black dog and
Mm-hmm.
said, "I am training this dog to be a better dog."
Okay.
And the woman said, "Oh my God, I have a black lab who has been behaving much better in the last couple of months since
Yeah.
Chico died." So
Wow.
she was told, I was blown away. She was blown away.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's Chico was the one that told me how it works.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
I'm glad I asked you that because I've often wondered, and I had a mentor who communicates with living animals, and
Mhm.
she had this theory. Like she felt that they came back, not necessarily in the same species. And then she said they may not even have the same personality. And to me, no, that doesn't make sense to me. And it never did. And I'm not dissing her. I don't diss anybody. Whatever their belief system is, their belief system. But to me, and mediumship is one of my newer gifts for me. The biggest shock for me with humans, I haven't tried animals yet, but humans, I'm very, very clairaudient normally with spirit. But I
Okay.
find with mediumship, it's like going to a different country. Some
Yeah.
spirit communicate with energy, some with smell, some with taste, some with color, some can show themselves. So it was a big shock for me because, and how I found out was the strangest. When I worked in the NICU, I had these 27-week-old twins that were born, a boy and a girl. And the little boy, we always used to pray for girls because little boys, unfortunately, do not do well when they're sick when they're born. And doesn't matter why, maybe because we don't need as many males to propagate the human species. I don't know, but it was always that way when I worked in the NICU. And he ended up having something very common with premature babies, a bleed in the brain. And so lo and behold, when I was working out in the community quite a few years later, who was on my caseload? Like, what would be the chances? He was. And I just ended up admitting him and somebody else that was, we have RPNs and things. So he was pretty stable. So I would just check in every now and then. Long story short, been off for years, really knew his mom well. And I was out Christmas shopping. And in Canada, we have Chapters instead of Barnes and Noble. And as I walked up to her, I seen her, oh my gosh, I haven't seen you forever. Gave each other a hug. And as I hugged her, I heard, tell my mommy that I love her. And then she told me he had passed away. And I already knew. And I said, you're going to think I'm crazy. But before you told me this, he said, tell my mommy I love her. And of course, we're both in tears. And I had about 4 incidences like that weekend. And it was all strange circumstances. So I knew this was something kind of to pursue. So that's, like I said, everybody has a story how it happens, right?
Sure. Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to tell you, as a medium too, they share their emotions, and I'm glad I do readings by, at my computer when I just see their picture, because I sit here and cry.
I hear you.
I'm like, I can't do phone readings. Sorry. No. It's too emotional. So one of the other things that I get asked often is somebody waiting for our pets, and how often do they stay behind as ghosts? And what I found is that 99% crossover, and the reason for that is twofold. Number one, there's usually somebody, a human or another pet on the other side waiting for them to have them come over. Secondly, pets can sense energy. We've talked about that earlier tonight. They can sense emotion. They know when you're happy, when you're sad, when you're angry, when you're, sick, and so forth. So when they pass and their energy, they can sense the energy on the other side, which is all peace and love and contentment. And that's where they go. They're drawn to that. So that's why most of them don't stay behind as ghosts. Only on rare occasions. And I've only encountered 2 ghosts, 1 dog and 1 cat. One on the paranormal investigation, a cat, and the other a dog in what is now a museum in England. I wrote about that in my book, Ghosts of England on the Medium's Vacation, where dead people wouldn't stop talking to me when I was on vacation. And 1 dog.
On vacation.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's Ghosts of England on a Medium's Vacation. If people like history of England and they like ghosts, you got both of them in one book. And my husband is an amateur historian on the Tudors, so he helped write the history part. Nice. But I knew nothing about England before I went, but I learned a lot from the dead people. But so that's another story. But so our loved ones are waiting for our pets on the other side. And the story I'm going to tell you is really emotional for me. So I probably get choked up because this involves my dog, Dolly.
Just let it all flow.
Okay. So,
no judgment.
So Dolly was the Weimaraner that I adopted when she was a puppy. She was 3 months old, and she lived to be almost 16 years old.
Wow.
I'm gonna look for a picture of her so that you'll be able to see her. You could probably see her back here. This is her.
I have to hold her up just a wee bit closer. Oh.
There you go. That's Dolly and Franklin. Those are the 2 that passed. So Um, in the last year of Dolly's life, she was a fighter, and because she wanted to take care of everybody. So in the last year of her life, she wore a diaper because she was incontinent with both. Um, but even 5 days before she passed away, she walked around the neighborhood. 7 days before she passed away, she did agility in our living room because I do agility with our dogs in the living room.
Yeah.
And she led the way, and the other guys followed.
Wow.
That was 7 days before, and she passed because she had a spinal rupture that suddenly just made her unable to walk, and she was almost 16, and she was miserable, and she told me that she needed to go. Now, getting to the part where I know that people on the other side are waiting. Dolly would sleep in the kitchen in the last year of her life because she was incontinent with number 1 and 2, and she had a diaper, but it didn't matter. So every night, we would come back in, and she would go on her bed, and the dachshund Tyler that's bonded with her would come in and lay next to her, and then I would lay down on the floor and put my head on her bed, and we would wait. Tyler and I would wait until she went to sleep. And then I would wake little Tyler up, and I would take him in the bedroom, and I'd put him to bed. Well, one night, Tyler and I fell asleep while we were waiting for Dolly to fall asleep.
Yeah.
And it was actually the night we knew that the next day she was gonna cross. Mm-hmm. At 2:30 in the morning, Dolly got up. She picked up her head. Now her back legs weren't working that night. It was her last night. She picked up her head, and she was staring at a door that went into the laundry room. Mm-hmm. And I kept trying to, I didn't look over there. I kept telling her, get back, lay back down. It's okay. It's okay. There was no noise or anything. And she wouldn't. And finally I looked over. And standing at that doorway were my mom and dad, who passed away. Oh. And our friend Ed, that I wrote about, I never met him, but I befriended him in spirit. He's my husband's late partner. That's another story. Buzz and Sprite and Franklin, who passed away. All. So they were all there. And I knew that was their way of telling me it's okay. They're gonna be there for her. So after Dolly passed, I get a text from my friend Ruth Larkin. She's the Beantown medium, and she said, "Rob, I have to tell you that Dolly's telling me that when she crossed, she said your mom and dad were there, and this other guy that I don't recognize, and 3 dogs." Oh. And I needed to hear that. I mean, I knew it because I visibly saw them for just seconds. But so I tell this story because everybody that loses a pet, someone is on the other side waiting for them, and they're going to take care of them. Mm-hmm. So, sorry.
You did a good job, because that was a tough story. I just about started to cry because, you know what, Rob, I have to agree with you. Like I said, when I worked in palliative care with humans too, I'm writing a book about this. I'm getting some incredible stories. I'm writing it from nurses' perspectives and what we see when people cross. And there's one thing we know from the physical signs when it's going to be time. And they start to talk about somebody is always there. Now, if there's rarely a person that doesn't have somebody in spirit on the other side.
Yes.
But if they don't, they may start talking about an angel, and then people think that, oh, well, they're losing it or whatever. No, they really are seeing
Yeah.
whomever they're seeing. They may have a conversation. The other thing that I think is really miraculous and such a beautiful thing, and I call it the gift with human beings. And we don't always see this, but it's usually somebody that's terminal and they've been comatose. You know, the ending, you can tell physically, is probably going to be in the next 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah.
And they wake up and they're completely lucid, completely just like how they were before they were ill. And for some families, it's really difficult because they think it's a miraculous healing. But what it is, it's a gift. It's a gift to have that conversation maybe that you weren't able to have, or, you know, to say what needs to be said. Sometimes it's only 5 minutes, sometimes it's 8 hours, and not everybody gets it, but I would say the majority of people that are terminal, in my experience and other nurses I've talked to. And what a gift. So the whole point of sharing this is that I've studied near-death experiences for 40 years. And again, we're getting to humans here. But, excuse me, most people who have had a near-death experience don't fear death. The same thing, even from what I've seen, I'd love to hear your thoughts about this with pets. They don't look at death the way that we do. They know when it's time, and they're okay with it. Like they're more concerned, like you had mentioned, about their human they're leaving, their parent, their pet parent they're leaving behind, that they're going to be okay, and it hurts them so much to see us in so much pain. Am I right about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
They want to make sure that we're okay. And that's
Yeah.
why they come around pretty quickly afterward. And I'm really glad you shared that story, because it actually works the same exact way with pets.
Mm-hmm.
That they get, usually before they pass, they get a burst of 5 minutes of energy. And I've had many people write me and tell me that they felt so guilty on their way to the vet to help their pet cross, and then suddenly it feels like their pet is perfectly healthy.
Yeah.
And I tell them, and I wrote this in one of my books. I can't remember. I think it was the Pets One book. Our dog Sprite, who was the 16-and-a-half-year-old dachshund, he was not eating for a week, almost a week before he passed, I think. And he was lethargic, and I just knew that he just didn't want to be here anymore. So he didn't even eat his treats. Now, he used to love, I think it was, I don't know, I think it was bacon strips. He would always eat that. That was the only thing. Sometimes if he didn't want to eat, he would eat that. But on his last 2 days, he wouldn't even eat that. And so we were driving to the vet with him, and Sprite sat up, and Sprite ate 2 or 3 full bacon strips, which is a lot for a little dachshund. And we looked at each other and we thought, oh my gosh, maybe this is not right. Maybe we're making the wrong decision right now. And the answer was no, we were making the right decision.
It was the gift.
Yeah. And Sprite wanted to let us know that he was very happy that we recognized that it was his time. And he was very grateful. He was very excited. And that energy allowed him to eat his favorite treats. So
I'm glad that actually we did talk about that, because like I said, you're the first person I've had on that communicates with pets and spirit. And that's good to know that that's kind of a universal thing. It doesn't always happen, but it happens a lot, especially if it's something that we're anticipating and it's been a bit of a process. It's not like, God forbid, somebody getting hit by a car, or it's when it's been a process. And again, it's I really call it a gift, but it can be so confusing because, again, there you are, right? Thinking, oh my God, did we make the wrong decision?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we were really questioning ourselves. But then I realized what was happening with him. So he made me feel better about it.
Aw. We have another question for you from Rick Gabbert. Is it difficult to communicate with an animal from a human at all? That's how they wrote it.
with an animal from a human.
So I'm guessing what I'm going to paraphrase this, Rick, and if I'm wrong, please feel free to correct me. I think he's asking from a human perspective, is it difficult for humans to communicate with animals?
No, not really. I understand the question now. So no, and the reason is because they lived with us, and we live with them. So we understood their behaviors, their actions, their moods and so forth, just like they understand ours. And what's interesting too is when a pet passes, they will actually behave much the same that they did when they were alive.
Yeah.
So they're not going to change. They're going to behave the same way. They're going to go to the same place in your house. They're going to, move the same things that they did. They're going to terrorize their sibling cat that they terrorized when they were. It's just that you can't see them. So.
It's not hard. I almost feel like our pets also, because thoughts are energy, right? And people, I always say, don't realize how powerful our thoughts, our words, and our emotions are. Mm-hmm. I have an example actually on one of my podcasts. I kid you not. I was interviewing a lovely gentleman named Paul Anthony Wallace from Australia. He's an author too. And I think we were talking about, it had to do with telepathy, but it was from a UFO perspective, and he looked at the old scrolls, and I forget why we brought it up. I think it was that we have all these abilities that we really haven't unlocked, and I believe that as humans, we're capable of so much more than we've ever been taught to believe. So he was giving this example of every time he goes out for a walk, he has these incredible experiences with animals that shouldn't be in the place that they are. And I forget why, but we were sitting here and I literally called my German Shepherd Emmy over, but I didn't say a word. I literally called her with my mind and she came right over, and you can see, because I tell people exactly what happened, and I didn't say a word to her. There was no reason for her to come over. Otherwise I have a little bed not little, she's not little, on her bed. She usually pops in here. She's not in here. Same as she always knows when my show is over. And it's not like I end at the same time every time. If she's in the room, she will come up here. She thinks she's a lap dog and everybody gets to see her.
Okay.
She's not in here tonight. She's downstairs. But I find everybody really enjoys that, because most people, okay, I'm just going to say this, and it sounds awful, and it's with no judgment. It's not my job to judge. But I find if you meet people that don't love animals or have at least a like for them, I'm usually fairly careful with them. It's just a rule of my own, but I don't understand how you couldn't love something so pure with unconditional love. Are they perfect? No, but neither are we. I don't know. I just find that, to me, sorry, I'm using my cracked phone here. I think it's Gollum MD7 says that was a very touching story about Dolly's passing. And thank you for sharing that, because that was really difficult. I really appreciate that, Rob.
Thank you. So in my Pets in the Afterlife 3 book, which there's a whole chapter about Dolly and her communications, and Franklin, her brother, that both passed the same year. And by the way, that I'm happy to say that just won an award as one of the best books on grief. The Book Authority named it one of the top 16 books this year on grief and loss. So Pets in the Afterlife 3, and it has Dolly and Franklin on the cover, which just means so much more to me. And it actually went to #1 on Amazon when it came out.
You're reading my mind, Rob, because I was just going to ask you to mention all this stuff.
I figured I'd throw it out there.
I was so excited. You messaged me when it happened, and I was so excited for you, because let's just talk about this for a second. Death is kind of a taboo subject in our society. And really, the only thing you are guaranteed of if you've been born is it's a life cycle. Eventually, we're going to be leaving this physical body here. And I really feel we need to talk about it. There was a great series talking about grieving and different cultures and stuff that was coming out of the UK, but we don't talk about pets. And I think it's so important because so many people are pet parents and have a lot of questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I found when I do these lectures at animal rescues that so many people don't know where to turn. And they actually don't know that they don't realize that other people feel exactly the same way that they do. Mm-hmm. So it's very healing. I mean, it's also very healing for me too. By the way, before I forget, I wanted to ask you, have you ever heard of Temple Grandin?
Oh, you are the only person I know that's heard of Temple Grandin. Let's talk about Temple Grandin.
Well, you mentioned about autism, so.
Well, one of the first, I've met Temple Grandin actually.
Oh, cool.
She's quite the lady, let me tell you. People may not understand this, and I always say if it's not in your bubble, you don't. But, okay, about 35 to 40 years ago, when Temple would have, much before that, been diagnosed, it was 1 in 10,000 boys. Depending on where you live now, geographically, it's about 1 in 43 to 1 in 45 children diagnosed under the spectrum. In the next 5 to 10 years, they're looking at 1 in every second child. So very important to bring up Temple because she's been a voice for the autism community as well as animals. So go ahead, Rob, take it away.
So for those who don't know who she is, she's an assistant professor of animal sciences at Colorado State University, and she has autism, and her experiences really helped understand animal behavior. Because she said that animals behave much the way that autistic people do, and they actually bond with autistic people, and they help each other. So I think I can't remember the name of her book, but if you look up Temple Grandin, you will learn a lot about animals.
There was a movie made about her with Claire Danes a few years ago back. It was very well done. And how she discovered that pressure is very calming to a lot of people with autism, including my own son. She was working on her aunt's ranch because she always loved animals. And so she was, she called it her squeeze machine, but it would be the machine that would hold the cows firmly if they had to have something medically done. But the thing about her is, and she's fascinating if you ever get to see her speak, even watch, a video of her speaking. She doesn't agree with this, but she started to be able to sense what cows were sensing when they were going to the slaughterhouses. And the fear and the terror and everything that was going along with that. So she actually has designed, I believe it's 75% of all humane animal slaughter facilities. And she doesn't agree with it in any way, shape, or form. She knows it happens, but if it's going to make the process easier for the animals, that's why she's gone along with this. And this lady is very severely affected with autism. Yes, very, very severely. She's learned, she's quite funny when you see her. She always wears the same black jeans. She'll wear a cowboy shirt with a bolero. She's quite tall. She's learned to incorporate some humor, but she has a very odd way of speaking as well. She's an absolutely fascinating individual.
Yeah. Now I remember the name of her book. It's Animals in Translation. That's what it is.
Perfect. Yes.
Yeah. Animals in Translation. It's really a great read. I read that, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, but it stayed with me. She really made an impression upon me. So
she made an impression on me because my son's 23, and I knew by 5 months something wasn't right. And he was diagnosed by 11 months. And had he not been, I don't know where he would have been, because he's still quite
Sure.
severely affected. He's kind of like at that precocious age, past the terrible twos, kind of like at that 5 to about 7-year-old range, where they can be a bit independent, but they still you can't leave them alone, and you need to do everything for them. But I will agree with you with the animal bond. Absolutely incredible, the bond that he had, and they are automatically drawn to him always, animals.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the speaking of science, by the way, because I'm a scientist, I always have scientific information in my books that I try to use to explain how pets communicate. So one of the people that I cite often is Dr. Stanley Coren, and
I know who he is. Yeah.
oh, you do? Okay, so
Yeah.
he's written quite a number of books about how dogs think and the intelligence
Mm-hmm.
of dogs, and he explains the different levels of learning and so forth. And so I really admire him for all that he's done. And those I summarize those things in my books so that people who read these books will understand exactly how animals can communicate. And one other important scientific study that I talk about is by Dr. Gregory Burns. Do you know who he is?
I don't know him. That's a 1 out of 3 so far. I didn't know.
So he's a neuroscientist, and he lives in Georgia. He works at Emory University in Georgia, Atlanta, and he is one of those people like us who is so sick and tired of hearing people who don't know what they're talking about when they say animals have no souls. He was so tired of hearing that stupid statement that he said, okay, I'm going to prove it.
Awesome.
He said, animals have the same emotions that humans have. And he said, I'm going to prove it. So he trained his dog and other dogs in his laboratory, owned by his, the parents of workers in his lab, to sit still for MRIs. And they did brain scans of the dogs while they were awake. And the pet parent would go up to the dog, and then a stranger would go up to the dog. And what they found is that dogs show the same exact reaction in the caudate section of the brain that shows love when their pet parent approaches them, that so humans show. So he has proven scientifically that animals have the same exact emotions that people have. So all that is in my books too. So I'm a scientist, so I've got energy, I've got behavioral science, I've got brain science, and I really try to put it in the scientific perspective, because that's who I am.
I think it's important. We got a few comments here, but I think it's really important. You know what it is for people, right? And I think people forget this. And then even working from a spiritual teacher or mentor place is to tell people that, when you walk in a place and you feel insecure, or you're thinking whatever we're thinking, we can have the worst inner voice, the things we say to ourselves. Guess what? Probably everybody else is feeling the exact same way as you are. They're just expressing it in different ways or hiding it in different ways. Same thing with grieving. And again, it's not a safe space unless you're an animal lover. And I mean, I think the pet industry is an over $5 billion industry. So that tells you how many pet lovers there are out there. But where to turn when you're grieving your pet, because you're at work, and we've all heard people say this, they've lost their son or daughter who they refer their pet to. Actually, somebody I connected you with when we started talking, and that's how they felt about their pet. And I get it, because I said, even though I'm a human mama, I'm still a pet mama too. And it's not a safe space to come out and be able to get the same kind of support you would if that was a human child. So I love that you've written these books so that people have a safe space. But where could people go, Rob? I mean, obviously, we're going to make sure they connect with you, if you're doing readings or you're doing a talk or however you want to express that. But where would you suggest people would go to get that kind of support?
Well, it's really hard to find that kind of support. Certainly pet mediums would be it'd be a great start to get just to get confirmation that, your pets are okay. And
Yes.
I do readings, and they can go to my website, petspirits.com. Actually,
Okay.
will take them to my website, because my last name is impossible to spell for 5 letters. But
Yeah.
so uh, the other thing too is that if you're really feeling depressed, please talk to a therapist.
Yes.
If you're feeling suicidal, please call the suicide prevention hotline. Talk to somebody there, because the last thing our pets want us to do is to wallow in sorrow over their passing. They want us to understand that they appreciated everything we did for them. They also want us to understand that they are on the other side protecting us. They are on the other side. They want us to know that they are okay. They do not want us to live in misery for the rest of our lives, grieving them. They want us to celebrate the time that we had with them. And in doing so, they also encourage us to adopt another pet and give them the love that you gave them,
Mhm.
that you are not giving right now. So there's a number of different things that I suggest for people that are grieving.
You know what? You're really right about this. We're just going a few minutes over, guys, because we started a little late and Joe was kind enough to give us a few minutes over. I think that's an important point that you bring up, Rob, because when we lost Shiloh, our German Shepherd, our first Shepherd, and she died at home, she died in my arms. Miley died in my arms, and my eldest son was there. I kept saying, "Are you sure you want to be here?" And he said, "Yes." And my partner, he never got over it, and he didn't want another dog. And the
Yeah.
opportunity came up to get Emmy. Now, Emmy looks completely different than what Shiloh. Shiloh was a long-haired, golden colored German Shepherd, black ears, black muzzle. Emmy is completely black, short-haired with tan markings. And the opportunity came up a few weeks later. Now, what I have found, and I think it's a really beautiful thing if people can do this, you are never going to replace that beautiful, beautiful baby that you had in your pet. But you've got all that love to give, and the fact that usually this animal has a completely different personality. It really can help with the healing process, can't it?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have a place to put our love,
Mm-hmm.
um, because otherwise we just feel empty.
You're right.
And it's perfectly fine to feel loss. It's perfectly normal to feel that way, and it's perfectly normal to feel like there's an emptiness in your house, because there is. There is a physical emptiness, but the love is something that is in your heart, and that is supposed to fill the emptiness. Um, it's important to remember that. And again, that's why I wrote these books, so that everybody would understand all the different ways that their pets are communicating or trying to communicate with them. And by the way, I forgot, dreams are the easiest way for pets to communicate from
Yes.
the other side. And they will, unless you're grieving an extended period, really deeply, they can't get through, but they make it through to somebody else in their dreams, so they can tell you that they're okay.
The other thing I wanted to ask you before I give you a chance to let everybody know how to get a hold of you. I always do that with my guests at the end and make sure everybody knows how to get a hold of them, where to find them. Plus, wherever I put the banner up, and make sure your website is in there. But what I wanted to ask, you were mentioning any pet that's left behind that is having a really hard time coping with that loss. Do you find that when the household is ready to adopt a new family pet member, does that help them in some ways as well, or do you find it's more difficult? What are your
No,
experiences?
it does. It really does help them, because dogs and cats are social animals, really.
Mm-hmm.
And although cats tend to be a little more independent, they really want a companion. Um, so it does help. It helps us, and it helps the pet too. I know that ever since Dolly passed away, our dachshund Tyler, the one that was bonded to her, has now bonded to our other new foster dog, our other dog that we had fostered and adopted. So,
Okay.
and they walk together, they do everything together.
Mhm.
So that it's really important to do that.
Mhm. So it kind of helps everybody heal. And that's what the
Mhm.
important part I'd love to point out again is it's never replacing that loss.
Mm-mm.
It's, if you will, it's like you said, we've got that love to give. We've got this physical empty space. And I don't know, I usually will adopt another animal, or not right away, always whenever the opportunity presents itself. Like I said with Emmy, there was a litter of 13 German shepherds born that my eldest son knew. And it was really funny when I went there, because my son also, we also lost Monty, who is almost 16, and he picked up my eldest and as a little guy, and we just lost him this year, a couple months ago actually. So he's looking to adopt rescue, but they have a dog together that is smart as a whip. He's my grand dog. Apparently, my neighbors even thought I had two dogs because he's been
Oh
here
my
that
God.
much. But he's my grand dog. I tell everybody about him. I don't know if I'll ever have grandkids, so I just adore him. But he wants to get his own dog now. So I've told him when the time is right, because he's looking to rescue. I said,
Mhm.
your baby will appear. Your puppy will come, and I guess the whole point I'm trying to say is, I think everything, no matter what happens, and it may sound cliche, but everything happens for a reason. And when it does happen, that's the time it's meant to happen, right?
Yes, yes. And know that our pets in spirit will lead you to the pet they want you to adopt.
Yes, that
And,
was my point in all my rambling.
yeah,
Sorry, I was going to tell
yeah.
you. So Monty picked up my eldest as a little kid. But when we went to visit Emmy and her sisters and brothers, all the other puppies loved me. Emmy wanted nothing to do with me. She picked up my eldest son, and I remember whispering in her ear, "That's okay. Soon you will be mine." And she is mine. Like, because shepherds especially really bond with one person. I'm
Yeah.
her person. I'm mom, and like everybody else is wonderful, but it's mom. Like, I'm surprised she's not in here, because like normally she's beating on the door to come in.
And I have to tell you, when I do readings,
Yeah.
when I do some reading, sometimes the pets will tell me, the dogs or cats will tell me that, that who they're going to steer a pet parent to. And sometimes they will say, like I just did a reading this week, I think it was a dog that said that their pet parent will adopt another dog, but they want their pet parent to adopt a female dog and not a male dog, because they want to be the only male dog in the house. So,
I love
and
it. I love it.
sure enough, the person that I did the reading for just wrote me back today and said they're looking at a female dog, and
Oh,
exactly the description that I described that from their dog in spirit. It
that
looked exactly like that, and that blew me away today. So.
that is so. I hope you're going to come back on again, Rob, because you know what? I know we could talk so much more about all of this stuff. And it's a beautiful thing when we can share messages. Well, mostly you. Yeah, I wanted people to hear while you work and what you do about the afterlife. And again, like I said, I think we need more discussions about pets in the afterlife, because they play such a huge, big part of our lives.
Yeah, they absolutely do. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to come back. I mean, I have all kinds of crazy stories and all kinds of different things, from Ghosts of England to befriending my
Ah, love it.
my husband's late partner that I
That's what
never
you
met.
said. I love it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
um, all kinds of crazy things. So
So how can
this
people get a hold of you? I know how to get a hold of you. I chit chat with you off and on, but
I
how
I know, I love it.
I love it
Um,
too. So where can
they
they buy your books? Where can they get a hold of you? How could they book a reading? All of these things.
Well, thank you. My books are all on Amazon,
Hmm.
and because I'm a self-published author,
Hmm.
I can set the price as low as I can, so they're all under $10.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
absolutely affordable. I'm not a medium that I just want to help people. That's basically the bottom line. So they can go to my website. If they type in petspirits.com, on the top right hand corner, it says how to get a reading. It's all done by email, and it's done on weekends, because I work in meteorology during the week.
Okay.
So Um, and I write a blog. If you go to petspirits.com, it's a blog, and I post about pets and people, ghosts and spirits a couple of times a week. So
I
there you
love
go.
it.
And also on Facebook, Twitter, and all those crazy places.
And if you ever want to get a hold of me, ladies and gentlemen, you can get a hold of me on facebook.com/the Angel Rock, whether that's to book a reading, some crystal energy, Reiki healing, chakra balancing. I do all that kind of stuff. Or I also do mentoring. Like I said, you can get a hold of me on facebook.com. I have 2 groups on Facebook, Paranormal University for all things within the paranormal. And we have a great group of people from all walks of life, all kinds of paranormal activity, investigations, whether it's podcasts. And then I have another group, the Angel Rocker Tribe, for all things, some of the things we've talked about tonight, learning to access your gifts, one of the common things we hear, how do I know the names of my spirit guides, or, chakras, crystals, energy, messages from spirit. So that's in the Angel Rocker Tribe. So I want to thank you guys for all being here tonight, for all the support, the chat, and the chat room. And Rob, I want to thank you. I'm so glad we can make it happen. The internet operated.
Thank you. Whenever you left me voicemail messages, I have to tell you that you just made my day. You just radiate positive energy and love. And I have to confess that I have listened to your voicemail messages like 2 or 3 times a piece, because I just love hearing your voice.
Well, okay. This is not coming from ego. And I think this is spirit trying to tell me something. I swear to God to you, because I leave voicemail messages, because sometimes it takes me 3 hours in the morning when I wake up, because you're talking to people from all over the world, right? And
Sure.
It's easier. I keep hearing that about my voice. I have one friend from high school that teases me. He says he listens to my voice before bed, and could I read him a story? So I'm wondering, I'm supposed to be doing something with that. So thank you. I'm glad. That's what I love to do, is spread positive energy. And like I said, that's why I leave it up to spirit before we do a show. I just say, Spirit, where are we going with this? And that's how it goes. So I'm so glad you were here tonight. I want to thank all the new people in the chat. I hope you'll return again next Monday. And eventually I do have a new show coming out. We're not sure just yet what night. And when we do, we'll be sure to advertise it. But we will be back Friday night with the host chat with the Centralist. Don't forget, folks, please, to go to podcastawards.com to vote for the Centralist. We have Amelia Pisano and Michelle DeRoche's show. I believe we also have Sean and Jenny's show under the paranormal. The commercial will play right after this, so I invite you to stay tuned, please, because voting's available to June the 31st, and we would appreciate if you could vote, because there's awards coming up in October. Again, Rob, thank you. We'll be in touch.
You said June 31st.
July. Thank you. July.
Oh,
July 31st. Night, everybody, or morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. We'll be back next Monday. Thanks, Rob.
Bye-bye.
Bye.